Hello everyone and welcome to another episode of the Daily Gwei Refuel, where I recap the latest news in the Ethereum ecosystem. I'm your host, Anthony Sassano, and today's the 30th of March 2022. Alright everyone, let's get into it. So you guys know that I'm heading to Amsterdam next month for the Ethereum Foundation run EFDevconnect event, which is a bunch of kind of like smaller events happening around Amsterdam. Hoping to see a lot of you there, but I put out this tweet before that basically showing or telling everyone what my EFDevconnect plans are going to be so far. So I'm going to be going to a bunch of these different kind of like events here. So I just wanted to kind of point this out to you guys. I'll be at ETH Day, Staking Gathering, Layer 2 Amsterdam, Shelling Point, and ETH Amsterdam Hackathon so far. I don't know where else I'm going to be. I'm just going to be around. Like I'm staying at a hotel in like literally the heart of Amsterdam, like right on the canals there. So I'm going to be around. I'm open to meeting up with people if I've got the time, but hoping to see a lot of you at the actual events. And yeah, just to have a really, really good time. I'm going to be in Amsterdam from basically, I think the 16th, or I fly out, I believe the 15th, and then because of the time zone changes, yeah, and because of jet lag, probably the 16th. Let's say the 16th of April there, but and then I'll be there until around the 26th. So yeah, basically the whole kind of like length of the event there. Hoping to go and see and meet as many people as possible. I'm sure there'll be kind of like people just all over the place. Like I'm expecting like Amsterdam, like around the kind of like conference centers, because there's two main ones, to just be crypto people or Ethereum people everywhere, which is going to be pretty funny to see. But yeah, if you want to know which days I'm going to be out, these are the ones. I'm speaking at Staking Gathering and the ETH Amsterdam Hackathon I'll be judging at so far. I may be speaking at some of the others, maybe Shelling Point, things like that, but yeah, that's kind of like the gist of it so far. And I'll keep you guys updated if I decide to go to any of the other events, because there's plenty of events happening. I just had to pick, obviously which ones I wanted to go to and which ones that I thought were going to be the best for me personally. But you guys might, decide something else is good for you, and you can check the schedule on the EFDevconnect website and just choose which events you want to go to. Hopefully you can get tickets because the spaces are limited. But even if you can't get tickets, it's not a big deal because, as I said, there's going to be people everywhere. So I wouldn't fret too much about that. But yeah, definitely go to the EFDevconnect website to check all that out. All right, so the biggest news from the last 24 hours has obviously been this Ronin network bridge exploit. Now, for those of you who don't know, the Ronin network is basically an EVM sidechain that the creators behind Axie Infinity spun up in order to kind of like scale up their game. Now, they've been wanting to do layer 2 stuff for a while, but it just wasn't ready for them, so that's why they went with the sidechain first, and they've been talking about doing rollups for quite a while now. And obviously, Axie Infinity blew up in popularity and got like really, really, really popular. Right? So anyway, back to the, exploit here. This is, I believe, the largest exploit in bridge history that hasn't been returned yet. So it was a $625 million exploit, about 170,000 ETH. And the sad thing is, well, there's actually a lot of sad things to this, but the saddest thing to me was that no one noticed for 6 days. That means there was no monitoring in place. No one was actually checking the chain or looking at the completely transparent kind of like blockchain. No one noticed that 170,000 ETH was stolen from this bridge until someone tried to go back from the Ronin network to Ethereum and realized that they weren't able to do so, because as you guys know, these bridges, a lot of them are just IOUs. So if the IOU is no longer there, if the bridge can't actually give you the assets that it owes you, in this case, the real ETH, then you're shit out of luck, basically. There's nothing you can do about that. There's actually a massive hole now where all the ETH, I believe all of the ETH, or at least, pretty much all of it on the Ronin network is basically worthless now, along with some USDC that was stolen as well, because those assets actually existed on Ethereum and just existed as an IOU on the Ronin network. Now, the second thing that was sad about this was that the Ronin bridge is actually secured by a 5 of 9 multi-sig. So you only need 5 people to sign off for things to happen, for transactions to go through. Now, apparently, five of these things, 5 of the validator keys, or whatever you want to call them, the private keys, were compromised, and the attacker was able to drain it using the 5 of 9 validator bridge. So they didn't need to exploit the bridge. There was no bug. They just basically got a hold of 5 of the keys and were able to take the funds out. As far as I know, there is no time lock on this. There is no limit to how much funds can be taken out at once by the multi-sig. So just OBSEC fails all around. Like, I mean, to me, the biggest fail is just not having any monitoring on your bridge. Like, that's just insane to me. And I'm actually wondering how many of these bridges actually have any monitoring at this point in time, because we and that's not transparent if a bridge is being monitored by kind of like the teams that run the bridges or the teams that manage the bridges. So those are the two, I think, saddest things that came out of this. If you want a full breakdown of it, of the whole thing, you can read this thread from Calvin Fichter here, which I'll link in the YouTube description. But what I wanted to talk about was bridges in general here, guys. Like, I've been warning about bridges for months now. Like, I'm not going to say I told you so, but like, I told you so. Like, the bridges are the single biggest point of failure in this industry right now. There is so much capital that gets locked up in these things. It is just a massive honeypot, especially the ones that are protected by things like 5 of 9 multi-sig, which obviously isn't ideal. Now, I know there are other bridges protected by stuff like this, like the Polygon POS chain bridge, that's protected by this multisig, and they've gone through their reasoning for it before. But also, they, from what I know, they don't actually have. They don't have control of the keys concentrated in the Polygon kind of like company. A lot of them is outsourced, and it's actually public who the key holders are. Whereas in this case, I think with the Ronin network, there were 4 validators on the bridge that were controlled by Sky Mavis, the company behind Axie. Now, I think that's the case, if I'm remembering correctly. I may be wrong there, so don't take that as gospel. But yeah, guys, like. And I've said before, like, not all bridges are created equal either. And I shared the blog post that I've shared before here from Dimitri Berenzon here, called "Blockchain Bridges: Building Networks of Crypto Networks." I talked about this on the Refuel when he first published it, but this is a lengthy blog post about all the types of bridges. I mean, it's a little bit outdated now, but basically all the types of bridges, how they work, how they differ, all that sorts of stuff there. And I've explained to you guys before how there really is only a kind of like a small set of bridge types. There's obviously the multi-sig bridge kind of like contract. Then there are the native kind of like bridges like the L2 ones, which are currently centralized, but the way they work is that they don't rely on kind of like this these trust assumptions. They effectively are as secure as Ethereum when they don't have a centralized admin key kind of controlling it. And then there are kind of like the cross-chain bridges like Connect and Hot Protocol, which is kind of basically putting all the risk on the liquidity providers to do cross-chain decentralized exchanges and all that sort of stuff there. So, as I've said before plenty of times, not all bridges are created equal. Obviously, we need to get off of these really insecure multi-sig bridges or kind of like 5 of 9 validated bridges. I mean, it's more accurate to say that it's a 5 of 9 validated bridge, because there are validators kind of like being run on the bridge, in order to validate the bridge. But the thing is that like it only needs 5 of 9 to collude in order to steal the funds, as is evidenced here. So hopefully, you guys didn't have much funds in this bridge, or if you did, you weren't kind of like too affected by it. Obviously, your funds are gone right now. I'm not sure what the response is going to be here in terms of like how to plug this hole. We saw the wormhole kind of like bridge get hacked a few weeks ago, and the way the hole was plugged was that a massive market maker known as Jump Capital came in and basically backfilled all of the ETH in there. Now, obviously, Sky Mavis, the creators of Ronin and Axie, have a big bankroll. They raised the recent round. The AXX token has gone up a lot. They have a big treasury. I'm wondering if they're going to backstop it. This is a lot of money, guys. $625 million worth of ETH. There were 170,000 ETH. Are they going to backstop it? Are they going to go out there and buy that ETH and put it into the bridge in order to save their network, basically, and save their community? I think if they don't, it could be very long-term damaging, because I mean, who's going to trust their funds in this thing anymore, right? Like, who's going to actually, like, they've burned so many people at this point. Like, that's a lot of people's ETH that is just poof, gone, right? Maybe they catch the attackers. I mean, there's a bit of weird things going on with the attacker. They apparently funded their wallet from Binance. Whether they did that through a bought account, because obviously Binance doesn't allow withdrawals without KYC, or a fake KYC account. And they had a few deposits to FTX and things like that. So there was a bit of weird stuff going on with the address, but I mean, you would have to think that it's either kind of like bought accounts and mules, essentially, that they're sending these funds to, or fake KYC accounts. If they're using their real identity and doing this, then it's like the biggest amateur hour ever. But yeah, I'm curious to see what happens and what the fallout is from this. But, I think that, like, it's always funny when these things happen, like these big hacks. You'd think that the most logical thing to do for the hacker would be to return basically 95% of the funds and then keep 5% or 10% as a bug bounty for themselves. The Sky Mavis would probably stop pursuing them in that case. There would be no kind of like law enforcement going after them, everyone will be happy. I mean, mostly happy, and maybe Sky Mavis would plug the rest, the 5 to 10% hole, with their own funds, and then the attacker makes off with the funds, and they don't even have to worry about how to cash it out then, because it's kind of like clean money from then on. It's a fairly paid bug bounty program there. I think that is the better thing to do, because imagine if you take 10% as a bug bounty, that's still $62.5 million. 5% is like $30 million, right? Like, come on. I mean, there's no way they're going to be able to cash out all this money. All these addresses are going to get tagged. Chain analysis is going to be all over this. There's no way for them to go to fiat here. Yes, they can go to stablecoins, but even going to centralized stablecoins is very dangerous, because those could be frozen at any moment. You know, we've seen USDC and USDT be frozen in addresses before. So what are they going to do? Keep it in ETH? I mean, sure, you can keep it in ETH, and maybe you can find ways to spend it, but like, it's going to be kind of difficult, right? At least now. Maybe in the future it won't be, when ETH becomes more ubiquitous in kind of like the offline world to be used as money. But I just feel like, instead of having this massive thing over your head the rest of your life as a hacker, being like, oh, you know, the authorities are going to come after me, they're going to catch me, blah, 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 and being pursued, just keep $30 million as a bug bounty, give the rest back, and you'd probably be fine, right? So I don't know. This is overall a weird kind of like hack to me, to be honest, and like how it's all played out. I'm curious to see if anything comes of this as time goes on, if that ETH just kind of like continues to get washed and they try to kind of like, you know, cash it out in some way. Yeah, I don't know. Like, it could go either way at this point in time. But yeah, I figured obviously I'd talk about it because it was the most topical thing happening today. I woke up to this and was just like, oh wow, another bridge hack. Like, I mean, I wasn't even surprised, guys. Like, this is going to keep happening. I'll be honest with you. This is not the last one that we've seen. I'm pretty sure I said this for the wormhole bridge. So anytime that this happens, I'm not surprised at all. And really, if you want the maximum security of your assets, keeping them on Ethereum, using one of the kind of like layer 2 bridges is probably the best way to go about it. Now, as I've said before, the layer 2 bridges are controlled by a centralized kind of like key as well. I don't know if they have time locks on them or anything like that. I haven't looked at them specifically, but at the end of the day, keeping your funds on Ethereum layer 1 is the safest thing to do, but I know that's expensive for a lot of people, obviously because the gas fees are still relatively high, and then I've obviously been encouraging people to move to layer 2s, but I've encouraged you to move to layer 2, but also said that there are risks involved with that at these early stages too. So look, I mean, you're never going to be able to get a reward without taking risks, no matter what you do in crypto. Like, you can basically sit on your ETH in cold storage on Ethereum layer 1, and you'll probably get a reward over the long term from that, because you're just kind of like, you know, sitting on it and appreciates in value. But if you want to do yield farming, if you want to do general DeFi stuff, if you want to do NFT stuff, there's always going to be risk involved. Like, even with the NFT stuff, if you approve the wrong contract, your NFTs can just get drained from your address. So, and some people kind of like bring this issue up a lot and say, oh, how are we going to get mainstream adoption if this always happens? I actually think that each one of these hacks and attacks makes the ecosystem stronger. Yes, the value is really high for these sorts of things, but the thing is that there was the bug that happened with the DAO in 2016, and what it was called then, what the attack was called, was a re-entrancy attack. We, as far as I know, haven't really seen any of those since then, and that's because all the developers know about this bug. They're like, okay, well, you know, let's not repeat that, let's not do this, and they've gotten better because of that. And obviously, over time, you know, security practices get much better for a lot of these things, but there are still going to be amateurs out there. And honestly, like, I like the Sky Mavis team, I like the Axie Infinity people. I think it's an awesome community, but this was amateur hour. Like, this is not something that should be happening on $1 billion project, not even $100 million project. Like, even on small projects, I mean, it doesn't take much to set up a monitoring service, right? Like, you can just monitor, you can use the API on even Etherscan to monitor these sorts of things. You can set up your own infrastructure and do it, and all it takes is okay, like, let's monitor for this, and if something happens, like, let's respond to it. And then even going a little bit further than that, put a time lock on this thing. Put so that when the monitoring comes through, you can actually see that something has happened, the keys have been compromised, and you can try and fix it. Set limits, right, to how much can be withdrawn at once from the bridge. Like, if a whale really wants to withdraw from, $100 million from the bridge, basically tell them, hey, you're withdrawing a lot of money, you're going to have to wait for that. And then have monitoring that shows a large withdrawal has happened in order for you to go and review that and see whether it's an attack or a legitimate withdrawal. Like, this is basic stuff, guys. This is not super advanced cryptography that we need to learn how to do this again. No, this basic stuff. I expect this to keep happening. I expect this every team that with a bridge to kind of like set up monitoring infrastructure. And maybe this is what was needed. Maybe the other bridge teams don't have monitoring infrastructure, and now they will because of this. As I said before, guys, every one of these attacks actually does make the ecosystem stronger. It may not be obvious or apparent at first, but I believe it does. And the reason why these hacks are so big is because of the fact that the money's just there, sitting in a contract, in a pool, right? And the more this ecosystem grows, the more the market cap of crypto grows as a whole. Obviously, the more lucrative these things become. So if you see a $10 billion bridge hack eventually, right? Like that, to be honest, like I think there's a high chance of that happening. If you see that happening, maybe in a couple of years, the ecosystem is probably much larger from there. It's just going to be kind of like, unfortunately, something that we should have expected, but depending on what the bridge is, depending on if it's just kind of like a bunch of kind of like, and if it happens in the bull market as well, like people could be just like aping into something without even caring about if the code is audited or if there's monitoring infrastructure or anything like that. So obviously not ideal, guys, but yeah, anyway, read this thread from Calvin for a full breakdown on what happened with Ronin Network today. But yeah, and be careful around those bridges, that's for sure. All right, so Tim Byko put out a little tweet today basically saying, what are the most important things to get right in the next 2 to 3 years for Ethereum to thrive? And he received a bunch of really good replies here. I want to go through a couple of them, and then I want to go through my own reply. But basically, Polygon was right in there with a bunch of the technical stuff that needs to go right in the next 2 to 3 years. Obviously, we want a smooth merge to happen. That's a given at this point in time, guys. Like, if the merge doesn't go smoothly, it's going to be really bad, I think, just in the short term, maybe even medium term, for general morale around Ethereum. And it's going to kind of like shake a lot of confidence in Ethereum. So we obviously want that to go right. We want EIP 4488 and 4490 and 4844 and withdrawals right after it in Shanghai. I've talked about those EIPs before. We want Vertical trees and stateless clients to go well. That's got to do with the stateless Ethereum approach that I've talked about before, with basically having it so that the chain doesn't grow to like an infinite size. We can kind of like prune old things, and vertical trees makes the blockchain, or at least makes the network more efficient from my understanding. And obviously we want dank sharding and PBS, or public block producers there. Sorry, PBS, not public block producers. I can't remember what it stands for right now. I've gone blank on it. But yeah, I mean, dank sharding and PBS, we obviously want to go really well as well. And then ossifying and waiting till ZKPs are mature and battle tested with rollups as well. So that's on the technical side of things, what we need to get right in the next 2 to 3 years in Ethereum. A lot of big things to get right there, obviously. A lot of critical things to Ethereum's roadmap, but I think Polygon hit the nail on the head there with those things. The second thing was this tweet from Fubar, who had three different things to get right. Running a light client from a mobile phone. So I've talked about light clients before, guys. Basically, what a light client allows you to do is basically verify only the small portion of a kind of like transaction that you want to verify, rather than needing a whole full node to verify it and to make sure that it's it all goes well. It's all trustless. No Lido dominance for staked ETH. I would expand that and say no, kind of like none of these centralized staking providers, or no staking provider in general, should have a large share of the network. And large is kind of like hard to define here. In an ideal world, we wouldn't want any to have over 5%, but we already have stuff that already has over 5% of the network. I mean, I'm pretty sure Lido has over 5% of the network. I think they're up to 10%. But I think we don't want it to be 33% or more, because that becomes like a censorship risk there. But yeah, I mean, I've talked about this a lot before, but definitely we don't want that. And then third one, which I actually disagree with, is base layer privacy by default. Now, the reason I disagree with this is, I've discussed it before, that when you do privacy by default on layer 1, especially built into the protocol, you lose sight of things happening, such as inflation bugs. Now, what I mean by this is that, imagine if there's an inflation bug within Ethereum where someone is able to mint as much ETH as they want. If there is privacy by default, if you're not able to basically kind of like look at everything like you can today, you would potentially not be able to even tell that there's an inflation bug and that it has been exploited. Now, that is obviously really, really bad, especially the fact that you couldn't be able to tell if it's been exploited or not. Maybe you discover the bug and patch it, but you'll never know until the coins actually move that it was exploited or not. And this actually happened with Zcash, I believe, and it's kind of like a big concern there. So I'm all for privacy by default, but at layer 2. It doesn't actually make sense to have it on layer 1 by default, because eventually layer 1 is just going to be roll-up transactions and roll-up call data and proofs and all that sort of stuff anyway. So it makes much more sense to just do it all at layer 2. But that was a good tweet from Fubar there. And then finally, just my kind of like tweet here where I said, I believe, and this isn't to do with technical stuff at all, but I basically said, I believe maintaining Ethereum's strong social layer as the network continues to grow and scale up to be the most important thing, because I strongly believe that without a strong social layer, everything else is meaningless. I've talked about Ethereum social layer a lot before, or just social layers in general. Look, the way I view blockchains is I view them as a social kind of like community first thing rather than like a tech first thing. And that's because who's running the full nodes? Who's managing the network? Who's putting in changes into the network? Who's keeping the network decentralized? It's all humans, guys. Like, it doesn't have anything to do with the technical stuff at kind of like the social layer. And then from there, you can kind of like layer on the technical stuff, which gets us all the properties that we want. But without a strong and healthy social layer, none of that matters. Like, it doesn't matter that Ethereum, like, let me give you an example here. If Ethereum's social layer was really shit, if we had a really bad community, if our community didn't care about decentralization, didn't care about network health, none of that sort of stuff, then it doesn't matter what tech things we put in place. The network itself would, in my eyes, be compromised. Would be essentially worthless, because it would be open to much more open to attack, much more open to being co-opted by special interests. There'd be much less people building on the network. There'd be much less people kind of building on not only just on the network, but building the core protocol infrastructure themselves. And it would just lead to a lot of bad outcomes. So, as I've said plenty of times on the Refuel, without a strong social layer, you have like just a really shitty database, honestly. Like, you don't have what I would consider a blockchain. You have a database that has a bunch of people kind of like working on it, but you don't have anything, you don't have what makes kind of like a crypto networks special there. So that was my take. And I just saw that Trent Van Epps actually replied with a bunch of different things here, where he says, here are the smaller ones that he believes. Continue to improve the dev experience, maintain healthy multi-client ecosystem, making clients stupid simple to run, including one-click staking, improving the EIP process, EF transparency, learning to live on-chain, improving light client constructions and actual usage in products, and maintaining the social layer cohesion through regular exercise of agency. See consensus client diversity campaign. We'll need the same for the execution side. I totally agree with everything Trent said here. Those are very important points, especially on. I really like him highlighting the social layer cohesion here. That I was, and how I was just talking about the social layer around client diversity. Guys, the only reason we were able to improve consensus layer client diversity and get it below 66% is because of this massive social campaign that's been running the last few months, spearheaded by the ETH Staker group, specifically Superfizz. And as Trent mentions, we do need this on the execution side as well, because as I said yesterday, Geth still has 80% of the network. We want to get that below, ideally kind of like the supermajority threshold as well there. So yeah, anyway, you can go read the rest of the replies to Tim Byko's tweet. I'll link it in the YouTube description below. All right, some news out of Visa today. So apparently Visa has launched a program to help creators grow their businesses with NFTs. So you remember that Visa has actually been responsible for purchasing some NFTs, a CryptoPunk included. They did this last year, and they've been very big on crypto. They're building a layer 2 on top of Ethereum as well. So they're just very, very involved in crypto. So now they're basically making a further kind of like jump into helping creators grow their businesses with NFTs, obviously as payment rails and as a payments network, which is really, really cool. So just wanted to kind of highlight this and kind of like highlight that Visa, I think, is the most forward-looking of these payment companies. They definitely are doing a lot of stuff in the crypto space that a lot of other payment companies aren't. Obviously, the other week, Stripe announced like full integration across their entire suite. Shopify has also announced integrations. All these Web2, TradFi, kind of like, I guess, what's the word for it? Kind of fintech companies are all integrating crypto. Very, very awesome to see that. Very, very exciting as well. All right, so Polygon announced what they've been teasing over the last couple of days finally, which is Polygon ID, a self-sovereign identity solution powered by ZK cryptography. I mean, guys, this is like the holy grail stuff when it comes to ID. So they're saying that it's going to you're going to allow complete user privacy, scalable on-chain verification, and open attestation ecosystem. And there's a TLDR and kind of like how this all works in this tweet thread here. And some of the highlights of Polygon ID. It reduces complexity and compiles ZK Snark circuits. So this isn't Stark, this is ZK Snark, which is different, but in the same family. Onboarding includes native apps, SDKs, and white label solutions, and an on-chain private verification is done using ZK query language. So this is really cool. I mean, some of the practical applications here of this are decentralized KYC for ICOs, airdrops, and access to DEXs. So you could do this in a way where you could KYC without having to reveal your KYC because of ZK magic, which I think is really awesome. Like, I think KYC is obviously not great, but if you want to do kind of like an ICO in a Sybil-resistant way or an airdrop in a Sybil-resistant way, you kind of need to do KYC because you can't do it in any other way, really. And I mean, you can and you can't. It's kind of really hard, but KYC is kind of like that obvious solution there. Not that I'm a big proponent of KYC or a kind of like a champion of it. But I think if you can do KYC while protecting user privacy with ZK technology, that's a huge win there. So anyway, give this thread a read. There's also a blog post to read about basically what Polygon ID is and what they envision it to be. You can see here, they're going to be doing so the roadmap here, they've got a Polygon ID wallet app for integrating for custom applications, Polygon ID platform, and a Polygon ID Connect as well. So all this and more, all the information on this and more is available in this blog post here, which I'll link in the YouTube description for you to check out as well. But just another exciting, I guess, kind of like tool from the Polygon ecosystem on top of everything they already have there. All right, so speaking of ZK stuff, ZK Pad Analytics, the Twitter account, basically have put together a StarkNet ecosystem map. Now, I have been telling you guys lately that the StarkNet ecosystem is growing really, really quickly. About 100 projects are currently being built, and this isn't including the ones in stealth mode either. And you can kind of see this map of the StarkNet ecosystem here, which I'll link in the YouTube description. But just some kind of like highlights. You can see wallets already supporting it, such as Argent and Ledger. Bunch of NFT projects on there, DeFi projects on there as well. New and old alike, like Aave is coming, but there's also new ones like Jedi Swap and ZK Land and Zigzag. And then there's a bunch of tools already kind of like spun up, such as the Nethermind tools and L2Beat and things like that as well. But definitely go check out this graphic. I'll link it in the YouTube description for you to do so. Super exciting stuff out of the StarkNet ecosystem. All right, finally here, I just wanted to give another quick shout out to Ethereum.org because, guys, I mean, for anyone who's been around for longer than maybe the last 2-3 years, you'll know just how bad Ethereum.org used to be. Well, I mean, it's completely opposite these days. I said in my tweet here, you can literally spend hundreds of hours going down a million different rabbit holes on this website. I mean, look at it. I'm just clicking through the website right now. Go click Learn, click on Ethereum upgrades. Scroll down and you have all this information available to you, and then you have links to more information. I mean, you can just go here and kind of like explore upgrades, the beacon chain, and it's been shipped, obviously, everything happening here, links to I mean, there's so many links on this website, guys. It's insane. Like, look at all this stuff. Energy consumption, learning about the EIP process, how that all works. Like, if you want to learn everything there is to know about Ethereum, this is where you go. Like, seriously, the Ethereum.org team has done an absolutely fantastic job curating all this information, more so than any other resource out there. So if you want to just sit there and learn as much as you can about Ethereum and dive deeper into basically all of it across basically everything happening in the Ethereum ecosystem, and doing it in dark mode too. I have light mode on, but you can switch to dark mode here. Then definitely go check out the Ethereum.org website. I can't think of a better resource than this. And the good thing is that they link to a bunch of other resources as well. So, even if you aren't finding what you want on the website itself, there's probably a resource that they're linking to that has that information as well there. So definitely go check that out. Of course, you can just go to ethereum.org. I don't need to link that for you guys. But I think on that note, that's going to be it for today. So thank you everyone for listening and watching. Be sure to subscribe to the channel if you haven't yet. Give the video a thumbs up, subscribe to the newsletter, join the Discord channel, and I'll catch you all tomorrow. Thanks everyone.